Senator Joe Griffo. Good morning, Joseph. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. So we now have a budget. I was going through a whole bunch of stuff on this. I want to talk about prison cuts, 3 paid hours to vote. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, there's a lot to this, so we'll talk about everything you want. But
plastic bags.
I think
Where were you on plastic bags?
Well, look, I understand from an environmental perspective if we need to look and do things differently. So if you want to ban plastic, that's fine, but provide the people an alternative without a cost.
Right.
So right now, they're still talking about paper, which still could become problematic because you're talking about trees, things of that nature, right? But now you want to impose a fee of 5 cents. There was a great routine the other day where Jay Leno got on and he came on to the Fallon show, the Tonight Show, and he said basically his role was the angry man. And he just said he came from California. In California now, he gets to the counter and he puts $150 worth of groceries on the counter, and the cashier says, "Would you like a bag with that?" He said, "No, I'm going to just eat it here or stuff it into my pockets." You know, and then when you get the bag, it's like, "Oh, by the way, that'll be another $3 or something."
Right.
I mean, we had a demographic here of a lot of people who are aging. You're not going to remember, I got to bring a bag or I'm going to pay for a bag.
You know
it's just ridiculous.
Stinks is they just figured out how to make shopping carts so that they really utilize these plastic bags. So now on the shopping carts, some of the new ones have these hooks that pop up. So not only do your groceries go in the cart, but they now hang all around the cart, on the outside, on the inside, and that's going to be gone because you're not going to be able to do that with any other bag. It's terrible.
No, I think let's start with this. And in fact, there's a great headline, I think, in the New York papers that says basically the summary state budget, and basically says tax.
Yeah,
and that's the problem. That's what we warned about, if you remember last year. You're going to go to one party control, one region domination. This is the three leaders that crafted this budget were all downstate Democrats with a New York City perspective, and we have a new tax on the internet, sales tax on purchases. So now anybody who's shopping on the internet is going to pay a new tax.
I didn't know that.
Tax on prescription drugs. Because anything, and there are legitimate needs with some of these prescriptions.
Weren't we just talking about lowering the cost of prescription drugs, and now we're going to tax them?
Going to tax it, a commuter tax going into New York City.
Yeah.
So those people that are there every day will deal with it, but so will all of us that go in to watch a play, go to a game.
What about competitive hunting? Did that get anywhere?
It did not get anywhere.
Okay,
even though this budget has way too much policy in it too, which we discussed.
Are we going to lose a jail? Prison?
The prison closures are going to be interesting because they're going to rely on the decision of the commissioner. I think our prisons do a lot of good things here from not only an economic perspective, but for the system.
Yeah.
You have central hubs here for food, for prescriptions, and also for medical care. So, and they closed one here the last time they had a closure. So I would hope that all three here, one is new, that they should all be in a pretty, they should stand on merit. But I don't know how this decision will be made.
This is politics. Don't give me your merit.
That's a good point.
Do you believe because we handle food?
I haven't gotten done with all the
handle
taxes yet.
Oh,
though,
sorry. I'm sorry.
Some more taxes though. Statewide tax on real estate, and then the bag tax that you talked about. And there's a few hidden wonders here and there. Beyond that, though,
Can I follow up on one thing? I know you got a lot of stuff. What do you mean a hidden tax on real estate or a tax on real estate? There's already a real estate tax, right? It's called property tax.
Correct. Well, that's the only good thing that happened in this budget. They made the property tax cap permanent.
Right.
But when you look at, there's a tax in New York City. It was going to come across the entire state on real estate transfers, particularly on high-end real estate.
Okay.
Now it's just New York City area right now. But most of this money is also, a lot of it's being dedicated to the MTA. And there wasn't significant parity. For instance, we had a special program, $65 million, that we initiated in the Senate when the Republicans had control to take care of severe weather conditions. Because up here, you see the potholes and things, and we just tried to say, look, this is something we're talking about, how each and every year you have more severe conditions, more severe and serious events, weather events. So how do you deal with that? Well, that was eliminated this year. So, we could fund the MTA. We can go in, and I recognize that needs are down there, and we should not abdicate our responsibility with the subways and the bridges. But on the other hand, what about up here? And that severe weather aid was taken out of the budget. The Consolidated Highway Program, just kept level, no increase, and yet there was more money directed to the Metropolitan Transportation Authority. So it's these type of things, a lack of balance in this budget, and we can get into all your questions. There was also, when we talk about policy, we're calling it the Criminal Bill of Rights. And look, there's an article here that the New York State District Attorneys are sharply critical of the criminal justice measures. Basically, cashless bail now. Bail, you're not going to really get people on bail unless it's a violent offense.
So what do you have to do? A bond?
No, nothing. You're going to be able to release the individual without any bail right now.
Wow.
There's just so many. And it's good,
so they're getting rid of bail, not necessarily
for certain offenses.
Wow. Okay. Right.
Certain offenses.
And mugshots are gone.
The mugshots are gone.
How did you feel about that?
I think I rely on law enforcement to give me their perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, like we always talked about it. Listen to the people who are in the field. Get their perspective.
Yeah.
Education is a great example. They promised the world $1.6 billion. Delivered hardly any of that.
Right,
in fact, they were similar to what we did last year, actually maybe a little shorter.
Story about schools right in your backyard, Rome schools.
Absolutely.
They got a chunk, but it's not going to be enough to prevent potential layoffs.
And to show you that example, we brought the superintendent to Albany. We had him make his case. We had a number of meetings, and we're still trying to advocate for him. But he had a unique circumstance and a difficult challenge in Rome, and we want to see that addressed. Let me give you an illustration. In Yonkers, they put a one-time special appropriation of $12 million for that school district.
Right.
And yet some of ours couldn't. And again, there we see where the leadership is centered, and when you go to this one-party control, where the priorities are.
Did you let New Hartford know you're not going to be able to bail them out this year?
Well, I'm hoping Superintendent and the board there are really working on a great path for the future based upon what we were able to do. And that is an illustration. Last year we were able to step in and divert.
And being in the minority now, you might not have the ability to do that anymore.
But we should be able to make the case on merit. In this particular case, it's all children, and that's the problem. Go ahead, Jeff.
the political thing, I'll tell you again. I mean, you just gave an example, $12 million for downstate. Okay, one thing, though, that you did say that I thought was a good thing, some of the taxes you've outlined are all specific to downstate. So downstate Democrats are taxing their downstate constituents, right? You talked about the real estate tax.
That's the only one.
The commuter tax.
Right.
That's also downstate.
But you're going to pay that tax, too. If you're going in. If you drive into New York City, you're going to pay that tax.
Okay. Well, how often do we drive into New York City?
I get it,
not that
but
often.
the point still is you're not exempt from it.
Okay, fair enough.
When you look at the roads and the highways coming into New York and the congestion, believe me, whether you're doing it or I'm doing it, there are a lot of people doing it, and they see that as a revenue stream.
And there was another illustration, and we were able to stop this, and I still digging into this budget because there are things that you'll find later. But and County Executive Pacini and I put a joint statement out. They wanted to bail out Nassau County because they did a property reevaluation. Think of the audacity of that. We've done revales in upstate New York, and it's a tough thing. And taxes
we can't even
up.
get them to cover flooding, for God's sake.
So to give them money because it just made no sense. So that's what we have so far, and we'll take any of your questions.
So you're going through this. How different is it going through it in the minority versus being in the majority?
It's very frustrating. Obviously, because you want a seat at the table and you want to be able to have an last year, we prevented several $1 billion in tax fees and hikes because we were in that position to be able to do that. And that's the most frustrating part. But the concern that I have is, and I want to see the system change significantly. We've always talked about, even before, the policy in the budget doesn't make a lot of sense. Like this criminal justice stuff that could have been dealt with outside the budget. So I think that it's tough. And again, when you can't not only have an involvement in the development of policy that has an impact statewide, but also it's very difficult to access discretionary funding where we would be able to direct some of that. Like, for instance, I just gave you the illustration of the severe weather assistance that's gone. It was $65 million, and they couldn't find a way to do that. But
I can't imagine, because he's become the weather governor. Anytime there's any threat of a storm, wind, anything, the governor's sending out alerts and announcements. And showing up.
And we talked about education funding being severely diminished, unfortunately, from what they had promised, but also the AIM funding, which is money to localities. That's just absurd right now, the way that's going to be handled, where first they would took away that money.
Right,
they restored the money, but now said that the counties will pay for it based upon the new sales tax that they're implementing, that the county would be getting this money, but instead of you keeping it, now you have to redirect it to pay the local government.
Right.
It's bizarre. It's
what
ridiculous.
about legalization of recreational marijuana?
You know, it's not in the budget.
Right.
He wanted it in the budget.
Some are saying it still could get done before June.
That's what he is indicating.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, there are a lot of things that will happen over the next several months now. Now the focus will be on legislation.
So it's not as much
that
of
had a fiscal element to it, and that wasn't in the budget.
Right. There's now it's a different now for you because being in the majority, you can kind of drive the bus a little bit here from the Senate standpoint. But now the question is, do you feel Democrats have the votes to be able to push this through?
Yes.
Do you feel they
yes.
do? Yeah.
It all depends upon, it's not to say every member of their conference is going to agree with things either.
Right.
The problem also is the numbers. When you're close, at least, then you have to force things to happen. I'm fortunate. I have a very good relationship with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, so I have an opportunity to arrange the meetings, to call to attention to some of the things that we have problems with, and actually get some things done.
Yeah.
And I do believe we should do that. We should work together. I'm not trying to, villainize anyone. I'm just trying to show the differences right here. I mean, people have different opinions and philosophies and governing styles. So I don't believe in that vilification, the finger pointing, the blame pointing. Today we're talking facts here, right? And so I do believe that individually that will be determined on how they feel individually, not only as a party, even though they'll get some pressure put on them. But I don't know what's going to happen on some of these issues. The other thing I didn't talk about is public financing of campaigns. That's something important for you because you're going to spend taxpayers' dollars. We couldn't find the money to take care of the severe.
That's done.
That's done.
Wow.
We couldn't find the money to take care of severe weather conditions, but we're going to go with at least $100 million. It could be up to $300 million for people.
Who gets funded? Which campaigns?
It's welfare for politicians.
Yeah.
Anybody. Right now it's starting at the state level, but you watch this.
So for assembly, for
governor,
Senate.
for comptroller, attorney general, for every
all
dollar,
the way down to assembly.
Every dollar raised, you get $6 to $7 in taxpayers' dollars.
Wow,
and that's outrageous in my opinion.
Wow.
They modeled it on New York City, and it's been a disaster down there. And we have statistics to show and prove that.
How do you reach a level where you get to be funded? Is it only for incumbents?
It's going to be it's going to be done for you. I don't know how ultimately the rules will be set up. They just committed to the concept, and they empowered a commission to make the recommendation.
Is this a paid commission? I hope. I hope
It's
they're making
similar to
good money.
The paid commission.
Yeah.
Can I ask? So what happens? Like in years past, we've seen, or let me give the federal presidential example. I know this is on the state level. Say there's 25 candidates for governor.
Mm-hmm. They're all eligible. Like, remember what I just told you now. The rules haven't been established or delineated, but essentially the general concept would be, yes, if you can raise the level that you need to raise, then they will be matched by taxpayer dollars.
We'll break and come back and wrap up the rest of this budget stuff here. Crazy, Joe.
Indeed.
You predicted it. Crazy.
It's not only March Madness on the basketball court, but in the corridors of the Capitol.
No doubt. All right. Sit tight. We'll come right back.